Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is National Master Laurent Belakis, and today we're going to take a look at the gameplay at Lower Box Chess League. Thursday night in Ben Salem, 30 minutes per player with 5-second delay. Two very talented chess players from our chess academy, very close in ratings, in levels, both of them around or above 1500, and both of them they go to Pensbury High School and they're part of the Pensbury High School chess team, and they played in Lower Box Scholastic Chess League also. So with the white pieces, we see Kaushal Janga and Eshan Singh. Eshan played a banker gambit, and white accepted the banker gambit, but here he played knight c3. I think in this moment of the game, it was an interesting move, this knight c3, but in the game we will see that white captured on a6. I think he should have captured right away. And now black could capture on a6 and see what white will do with the bishop on f1. If you play knight c3, I could play g6 or d6. And if you play e4, then I could trade bishops, and now you can't castle anymore, but you will have to walk your king. The early 2000s, Magnus Carlsen played this with white. It's very playable, and I like this move h3 here to stop knight g4 and knight e5. And white could play queen e2 or rook e1 here. So black, white can also play knight c3. Let's say you play g6. I could play knight f3 d6 or bishop g7. I could play bishop g2. And now the bishop is on g2. So white could play with queen c2, rook d1, rook b1, many ways to play here for white. And let's go back to the game. In the game, white played knight c3, and it was interesting for black to capture on b5. And if you capture with the knight, black has a lot of interesting moves here. Probably the most interesting, I mean, if you play natural bishop a6, I just come back with the knight, and now we transpose to that walking line with the king, and you castle by hand, where you could play h3 here. If you play e4, then b4, knight b5, d6, this is interesting. Black has this strong move here, g5. With the idea is that if you capture on e4, white could play queen e2, and white can actually capture on d6 here, because the e7 pawn is pinned, and now we see the idea of bishop f4. In the game, we had g6, e4, d6, knight f3, bishop g7, h3. I do like this move. It takes the g4 square away from the black knight and from the bishop in the same time. Knight bd7, natural moves, but I think white wanted to play bishop e3, and he wanted to stop knight g4. So the bishop on e3 cannot be attacked. Castle and bishop a6. And here I think where the interesting moment was, the black could have played queen a5 here, in my opinion, or queen b6 even. The idea is to bring the queen out, and when you trade bishops, to cover the white squares with the queen. So both of the moves will be fine. In this case, because the bishop is on e3, You could even play queen b6 and attack the pawn on b2. Rook b1, bishop a6, bishop takes, and like I said, you could cover the white squares with the queen, queen e2, knight b6, and even if you're a pawn down, you don't have to be afraid of trading queens. Queen is a great defender, and believe it or not, the c pawn is at least equal to a and b2 pawns, and sometimes even stronger, especially if these white pawns, they're gonna move and they're gonna create weaknesses. So white plays natural moves, then black plays knight f2 d7, transfers everything to the queen side, opens up the bishop from g7, and he can win his pawn back. If white doesn't want to give up this a2 pawn, and let's say he plays rook f2 c1, I really like this thematic move f5. And now black breaks white pawn structure and creates a weak pawn on d5. He attacks it and is ready to capture it. You guys can observe how black is pressuring the two weaknesses on a2 and d5. And black has no weaknesses. It has a great compensation here. So after bishop takes a6 and bishop takes a6, the difference is that on a6 we'll have a rook instead of a queen. The plus is that you could play with queen a8. I don't think black was even thinking about it, queen a8. This is very interesting move because it makes very difficult to push e5 because the black pieces are pressuring on d5. Second, you pressure on a2, and third, you're preparing rook b8. Castling, rook b8, and now the typical maneuver in the Banco Gambit, knight e8, and then c7 and b5. You want to trade, and you also want to pressure or capture on c3 and then capture on a2. So white has to be very careful here. And rook a4, this is a very important move. You don't let white to push a4. Now you're pressuring on e4 and you're ready to triple up on the a file and pressure attack the a2 pawn. This a2 pawn actually is a weakness. You fix this weakness, you create it, then you fix it that you can move, then you attack it, then you capture it. Yes, the black squares are weak around the king, but you could cover the black squares with f6, hide your king on f7, and triple up as soon as possible on the a file. And capture back your pawn on a2, and then you break through on the queen side. In the game, black played queen a5 and castle and rook b8. What's the difference between the two setups, queen a5 and queen a8? Is that with the black rook before you could capture on a2. Now with the white queen, with the black queen in the front, you can capture on a2, and that's the reason why white probably played rook a2 b1, knight d8, queen c2, knight c7. This is a typical idea in the Banco Gambit, and black was very consistent. It was also interesting to bring this rook back to a8, queen b4 to attack the knight on c4, and then to trade this knight from c4. And I really like black here. I really like black here. I could take here. I could always give up my queen for two rooks. I find it much harder to play this on the white side than on the black side, even though white is up a pawn. Knight b5, knight c4, queen b4, and they traded knights. Black was very consistent with his plan. White played a3, created a weak square on b3, Black right away played queen b3, very good. And now, again, he went backward with the rook. Again, I think black should have played rook a4, and this rook could pressure on the fourth rank, in this case the knight, also the pawn on e4. And once you trade this knight on c4, black is doing really good here. There's two ways to trade this knight. Instead, that black played rook a7, and it's kind of a free move. White has a free move, and he started playing a little bit active here. It was interesting for white to just play rook f2 c1, finish development, taking control over the queen side and consolidate on the queen side. Instead, white played active with bishop g5, attacking the base of the pawn structure. And instead of knight b6, it was interesting to play knight e5. And with the same idea, like in the game, black has queen a2, he has bishop d4 check, he has f6, and covering the black squares with king g7. What's the difference? That after taking, it's very similar actually. Here, black should have covered the black squares with king g7 and f6. This was very important. And now queen a2 here. So if you try to open up my king side, then rook takes b2, rook takes b2, queen takes b2, and when you take on g5, your bishop is pinned, you can't capture on g5, and black breakthrough is in time with his counterplay. In the game, black played rook a to b7, and I think he lost a tempo here, he lost a move, and this tempo, this move, in my opinion, cost him his advantage here. If he would have taken care of his king with king g7 f6, he's winning on the queen side because the b2 pawn is weak. Rook a to b7, f5, f6, and now black played queen a2. The difference is that white captured on g6, and now the king gets weaker. This pawn on g6 is weak, and it's very easy to attack. So queen g4 very good, h4 was very strong here, and obviously he said, I'm going to pin this pawn, and then I'm going to attack it, and then I'm going to capture it. Rook takes b2, so we see that black is a tempo behind because white is exactly on time with h5. Rook takes b1, queen takes g6 check, and here black did a big mistake and he played king f8 and bishop h6 checkmate. Obviously, black was in time trouble and he missed bishop h6 and probably didn't want to take a draw here. So we do have a few 1500 players, and we have Robert Yaffe joining us Thursday night also, high rated 1500. We have Thomas O'Neill, high 1400 player joining us. So the chess league on Thursday night is getting stronger and stronger. You could watch the results and the link to see the players and the ratings. And if you want to join, you know where to find us. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you guys soon.